Are the New York Mets tanking games for better odds in the MLB Draft Lottery? I'll discuss that and more on today's edition of Locked On Mets.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on Twitter at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Well, since the trade deadline, the Mets have lost every single game they've played in. They got swept by Kansas City. Then they went to Baltimore and got swept by them too. They have only scored more than 3 runs once in that span. They've been outscored by a margin of 39-14. Their lineup has consisted of guys like Danny Mendick and Rafael Ortega on a nearly everyday basis. DJ Stewart in there all the time as well, though he was part of the lineup pre-deadline. So that one you can excuse a little bit. But this team has just completely fallen off the map. And granted, they weren't really on it anyway, but we do have to acknowledge that the Mets were 14-9 in the month of July. That was the best record in the National League. But it's only 5 games over, and they made a wise decision to realize that this team wasn't going anywhere. Because you know what? As much as you can say, well, look, here's a team with Ortega out there, and Stewart's batting cleanup, and Danny Mendick's in there all the time. And it's just a roster full of 4A players, journeymen that'll venture around the league but never have a home. Looks a lot like the 2018 Mets or the, end of 2021 or 2017 or 2010 through 2013, right? It's all these bad teams rolled up into one, and you have to watch it now for the rest of the season if you choose to. And it's frustrating. But what I would say is if Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander were on this team, would they have won those series? Maybe they beat Kansas City. Maybe. But not a guarantee. Even if they had David Robertson too. Are they beating that Orioles team? Probably not. And so the Mets made the move they did. And I don't think you can really look back on it now and say they made a mistake, because clearly, even with the pieces that were subbed out, yes, they gutted the roster. This wasn't a team that was going to make noise this year, because I'll tell you what, Pete Alonso, Jeff McNeil, Francisco Lindor, and Francisco Alvarez should be good enough to take at least a game from the Royals. But had the Mets gone the other direction now, are they actually taking these games? Because if you watch them play, it certainly looks like a team tanking. I mentioned the names that are in the lineup every day. You're running Tyler McGill out there and David Peterson again because you don't have any better options. And the bullpen has really not much to trust outside of Adam Ottavino and Brooks Raley. And even that, I mean, that's not the type of leverage guys that are going to win you tight games. They can only do so much. So the bullpen's terrible. The rotation's bad. And now the bottom third of your lineup is a disaster. It certainly seems like you're tanking games. Now, why would the Mets do that? Well, partially you could say, hey, they just gutted their roster for prospects, and this is what happens. And I think that is actually what's going on here. But there is incentive to tank games. And maybe the Mets are quietly a little bit happy about the free fall, a little bit okay with the fact that they have just gone from a bad team to one of the worst teams in baseball. Because the MLB Draft Lottery is a thing. That's not something that Mets fans thought they had to concern themselves with, because you weren't supposed to be in the lottery. But here's the significant part of the rules. If the Mets are a lottery team and they get one of the top 6 picks as drawn through the lottery system, they get to keep the pick. Now, it's not they lose their first round pick, but because they're a luxury tax team, with the penalties they've served as being the most severe luxury tax team, if they were to not be a top 6 pick, and let's just say they're 9th, which is where they're slated right now, that pick drops 10 slots. So being in the top 6 compared to being 7 through 10, that is a massive difference for the New York Mets. Talking about being top pick team to bottom third of the draft type team. So that is a very serious wrinkle into the Mets season right now. It's tough to say, hey, just root for the Mets to lose games. And I don't know if I'm that far into it because I still got to watch these games. I'd like the Mets to, I don't know, have somewhat a promising run of baseball before they try to contend again next year, where some of these young guys can come through. And we're going to get to those young guys in a minute, particularly Brett Baty. But there is incentive here to lose. That's what I am getting at. If there is one bit of solace you can take at every Mets loss, it pushes them closer and closer to getting a top 6 pick. And here's how the odds break out. Right now, the Mets are tied with the Pittsburgh Pirates at 50 and 61. They are, for whatever tiebreaker it is, the 9th place team. Might just be money spent. I'm not exactly sure. But the Mets currently have a 2.7% chance of winning the lottery. Now, they are, however, within 2 games of 5 teams. So the Mets find themselves at the bottom of that list. And they're one of the 5 worst teams in baseball. If they come in 5th in the Tankathon Olympics here, they'd have a 10% chance of winning the lottery. Now, that's significant because the top 3 teams have a 16.5% chance to win the lottery. So one of those 3 teams, you're about a coin flip that they will be the top pick, 49.5%. When each of those teams gets their top pick, the odds get better and better for a team like the Mets. So if you're 4th worst, you're sitting at 13.25%. If you are 5th worst, again, you're at 10%. And even being at 7.5%, which I believe is what 6th worst was. If all 3 of those top 3 teams get the top 3 picks, and you're looking for picks 4, 5, and 6, well, a lot of those lottery balls, those odds, will be pulled, and your odds increase significantly. So you want to see the Mets lose games in some respects. Again, it's tough to root for it, but if the Mets found themselves with a disaster of the season and they have one of the 5 worst records in Major League Baseball, there's every chance that it turns out to be a huge win for the Mets because their top pick ends up being as high as possible, and you can get one more really top tier talent to add to your farm before, well, not before next season, but you'll know that you'll have that type of a pick going into next season. And as you think towards the future, 2025, 2026, a piece that you can slot in. So that's something that you have to think about a little bit. And it's, again, the one little silver lining you can take when your favorite team looks awful series after series. And one of the reasons they look so bad lately is because Brett Baty has been an absolute disaster at third base. I can't believe I'm saying it. I think it's time for the Mets to demote Brett Baty, and I'll explain why in just a minute. Before we do, today's episode is brought to you by Dave. Dave is the banking app that is leveling the financial playing field. When you download Dave, you can get up to $500 in 5 minutes or less. No credit check, no late fees. It's part of Dave's extra cash account where they will advance the money you need with no interest and then you settle up later. Extra cash gives you more money to buy groceries, fill your tank, finally get your car repaired, or just catch up on the bills without having to wait for your next paycheck. You can even build credit when you settle on time. Millions of people have already downloaded the Dave app to make their finances easier. So if you're in a pinch, get the help you need by downloading Dave. Download Dave today at dave.com/MLB. That's dave.com/MLB. You can get up to $500 in 5 minutes or less. No credit check, no late fees. Download the Dave app now or go to dave.com/LockedOnMLB. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Eligible criteria and instant transfer fees apply. Banking services provided by Evolve, member FDIC. The New York Mets play the Chicago Cubs 7:10 Eastern Time tonight. Catch every pitch of the Mets hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Mets. Is the time here where the Mets should demote Brett Baty? Not something I really thought we'd have to discuss at all this year, but the numbers are disastrous, and the eye test is even worse. You look at July. Brett Baty hit 188, 233 on base, 319 slug. He had 24 strikeouts and 72 plate appearances, so he was striking out well over 30% of the time. And he didn't get a hit this past week. He struck out 8 times in 18 at bats. He looks absolutely, utterly lost right now. Across 86 games this season, Brett Baty has hit 216, 289 on base, 331 slug, a 620 OPS, 76 weighted runs created plus. Again, WRC plus measures hitters based on a league average of 100. So he's been 24% worse than your league average hitter while playing bad defense at third base. Now, at this point of the season, early it looked pretty good. Lately, it's been bad. He's never had in his entire professional career a walk rate under 10%. He's sitting around 8 right now. And the strikeout percentage of 28% is his worst since rookie ball. Brett Baty cannot hang in the big leagues right now. He just can't. And what's bad is that they keep running him out there and they're destroying this kid's confidence. I understand. Play the kids. I get that motivation from fans. I am with you. Play all the kids you can. Promote guys. And instead of watching Tyler McGill pitch, let's see Christian Scott pitch at the big league level. You know what? Why not? The guy has been awesome in Double-A. He was a college arm. He's, taking a huge leap in this farm system. He's got good stuff. He's not walking people. Just see if he can hang. Why not? I am all for all of it. Call up Luke Ritters, has the most home runs in the Mets minor league system this year. Call him up. Let him play second base. Whatever you have to do. I am all on board playing the kids. And that should lead to Brett Baty, right? Not when he looks like this. Not when he is clearly struggling. And he needs to work on his game. He has to work on his game away from this complete train wreck of a 2023 season for the Mets. You got to clear him out and get him in Syracuse and just change up his mindset. Get him to focus simply on his game. Stop focusing on everything else. That's what I think the Mets have to do at this point, because you need the best version of Brett Baty. You need to develop him properly. And I don't think he's getting development in the role he's in right now, where he's just run out there every day, which we wanted, but he's get hung out to dry because he just can't hack it. And I think in AAA, he'll go to a hitter's league. He'll get hot. He'll start playing better defense. And then maybe you bring him right back up in September. And maybe he has a good final month of the season in the big leagues. Let's just say everything works out great for you. He hits good in AAA. You call him back up the second week in September. He has 3 weeks of baseball. He hits well over 300. He takes his walks. He pops 5 home runs. And now he goes into next year, has a full off season, a great spring training, and suddenly you feel actually positive that you're starting third baseman. All of that could happen for you. But instead, if you keep him here and he continues to struggle and he finishes off a horrible August and you still run him out there for September and he's bad then as well, what kind of player are you going to get next year? That's the thing that scares me. Because what you don't want to do is lose this guy. Just keep running him out there till the point where he's just a shell of himself moving forward. So, to me, this would be an opportune time to send him down, to let him work on his game for a couple of weeks. And if everything breaks right, you get a final month of the season where he does play third base every day, but he's a more confident ball player who can actually have some hope of succeeding at the big league level. Because right now, I just don't see much hope in a guy that seems to strike out at like twice a game, ugly strikeouts, mind you. And when he does hit the ball, it's on the ground or it's a weak fly ball. He just has not driven the ball with authority. And I would be searching for some answers. And to me, those answers lie in AAA Syracuse, where Ronny Mauricio is waiting. Could the 2 top prospects, although Baty has graduated, but still those guys that have been atop the Mets system for all these years, swap places at the big league level? I want to explain why that would make a lot of sense in just a minute. Before we do, today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Getting to know yourself can be a lifelong process, especially because we're always growing and changing. Therapy is all about deepening your self-awareness and understanding, because sometimes we don't know what we want or why we react the way we do until we talk things through. BetterHelp will connect you with a licensed therapist who can take you on that journey of self-discovery from wherever you are. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient and flexible and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Discover your potential with BetterHelp by visiting betterhelp.com/LockedOnMLB today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnMLB. The New York Mets play the Chicago Cubs, 7:10 Eastern Time tonight. Catch every pitch in the Mets' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Mets. There's one thing that fans have been clamoring for lately. It is the promotion of Ronny Mauricio. And when I say lately, really it's the last couple of months. Everyone wants to see Ronny up with the big league club. On the year, he's hitting 289. And I know there's a lot of fans that see that batting average and just think, oh, this is a hitter. Let's call him up. He's got a 338 on base percentage, 479 slugging percentage, 16 home runs, 26 doubles, 19 stolen bases. He has the lowest strikeout rate of his career, and he has the highest OPS. So what gives? Why isn't Ronny Mauricio up? Well, a couple different factors really could matter here. For one, lack of position. Hasn't really taken to second base or left field. That has been one of the things the Mets have sort of waved around about Ronny Mauricio and why he shouldn't get the call at this moment. Two, there was an article that came out, and apologies that I don't have the exact information. Might have been the New York Post, but that's off the top of my head. But this week, I know I was reading something about Mauricio, and it was essentially talking about how the Mets feel like he's been complacent. He's been waiting for that promotion. It's something that they dealt with last year in Double-A, where he spent the entire season at Binghamton after he watched a lot of his friends get that call up to Triple-A. And now he's in that same position. He's watching Brett Baty and Francisco Alvarez and Mark Vientos playing at the big league level, and he is still stuck in Syracuse. So there's some that feel like he has not been playing as well lately because he has gotten complacent and he's bored with that league. There's another school of thought that maybe he's just exhausted. The guy played in the Dominican Winter League, played a lot of games, got a lot of plate appearances. He hasn't really had a break in a really long time, well over 1,000 plate appearances. So maybe that's it. But ultimately, there's, of course, the business side of the game. There's the fact that the Mets wait a little bit longer. They can maintain his rookie eligibility, which would be important because next year, if he wins Rookie of the Year, the Mets would get some type of draft pick compensation for it. So that could be something that would entice them. Also, here's a guy that you might want to keep as much team control over as possible. You haven't started that service time clock yet. All of that to me is ridiculous. Now, the bad play lately, that is something that you can at least hang your hat on a little bit. Say, okay, I get why they aren't doing this. First 2 months of the season, OPS well over 900. It was 974 first month, 948 the second month. Then you get to June, 620 OPS, July 773, August 511 in 6 games. Actually, it's 5 games, excuse me. But the numbers have been on a steady decline, which is absolutely fair. With that said, I still think you call him up because A, you don't have anything to lose, and B, to me, you're better off seeing him flame out right now than trying your theory next year. If you don't think he's going to be a big leaguer, that's fine. There's probably a lot of other teams that might not believe in him as well and might not trade anything for him. So the idea that you're preserving a trade chip is a little bit ridiculous at this stage. I think a lot of people have seen enough of Ronny Mauricio. If the Mets were going to move him for some type of an impact player, it probably could have happened already. Now, there's the draft pick compensation and the service time stuff. Well, listen, at this point, are you really too concerned about Ronny Mauricio's service time if this is a prospect that you haven't really believed in? And this is just me looking at the organization and what they've proven up to this point, which is here's a guy that they've almost kind of kept at arm's length because maybe they don't fully believe in what he's going to become in the big leagues. They look at the bad plate discipline and they have their questions and concerns about it. But still, to me, I really don't think that you have to worry about Ronny Mauricio winning the Rookie of the Year. And service time, if you lose a year on him, but you found out now that he can play, to me, that's a worthwhile investment, honestly, because you're going into next year with as many questions as you can imagine around this roster. And Ryan Reese is a question that you should get a little bit of intel on. Brett Baty's been with this team all year. And I think what could happen is you could swap the two, call up Mauricio, which would lessen the sting of demoting Baty. Baty's awesome for 3 weeks. Mauricio can't get out of his own way, striking out all the time. And then make the flip back, and you still maintain the team control. And you go into next year and you wonder what Mauricio is, but maybe you have a better feeling on Baty. I just think at this point, Brett Baty is looking like a player that needs a change of pace, that needs to get away, that needs to clear his head to get back to the ball player that he's been in the past. And Ryan Mauricio is a guy that did earn the promotion. And while he hasn't earned it lately, when your season's lost, just try it, because honestly, who cares? The Mets win or lose games. They're probably playing for ping pong balls anyway. So that means starting Jeff McNeil at third base because Ronny Mauricio is comfortable at second, by all means. That means playing Ronny Mauricio at third base, even though he hasn't played that at all this year, as far as with the Mets minor league teams or with the Syracuse Mets. He did play in winter ball, though, when I believe Ellie De La Cruz joined his infield. So I, I don't know. Or maybe it was O'Neal Cruz. It was one of the Cruzes. But either way, maybe you stick him at third base, see what you got. Or maybe you DH him. He doesn't have a position. Don't even play him in position. Play Mark Vientos at third base. Why not? Does he look good there? Not really, but who cares? When you don't have the burden of trying to win games, it should allow you to focus squarely on the development of your prospects. And with the way that Baty has struggled without getting any aid, with the way that Mauricio has clearly yearned for promotion and hasn't gotten it, give the kid what he's been waiting for and see what he does with the opportunity. If he squashes it, all right, you can flip them back in September. But the Mets have to do something here. And it's not about winning games. It's about making their product at least somewhat consumable for the fans, and swapping the struggling rookie for the rookie everyone has been dying to see. That is worth its weight in gold enough for the Mets to make this move as soon as possible. And hopefully, a lot of you are listening to this. If it's solely just the promotion of Mauricio, though, seems like that's further away, or the demotion of Baty, I think if they make either of those moves, they're making the right choice. But that's going to be all for today's edition of Locked On Mets. For all you everydayers, tomorrow's show, we're going to discuss Max Scherzer and his tenure with the Mets, and if he was a failure in New York ultimately. So that's going to be a fun show. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Follow me on Twitter at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. If you want to catch every pitch to the Mets hometown broadcast today, you can do so with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Mets.